What is up? My code is still in dub. But apparently it's time to do some. Where the hell am I? Some saucy saucer. Not great luck there with that roll. Hey. So it doesn't really matter which way I go. Bummer. Oh yeah. Do some Air Force One. My eyes are having a hard time focusing. Maybe because it's 3 in the morning. Don't feel like being a responsible adult who goes to sleep. Sleep is for the dead. there not some other currency I was supposed to be getting? Maybe that's not the thing. What the hell is happening? Nice. Kind of remarkable how rarely I get. Oh, it's the correct position also. I think that's why. Okay. Oh yeah, I was like Manderville. I remembered that. That's the lore. He comes from here. How do I do this shit? Fashion a pole? This page is in Italian. The Emperor's New Gloves. Gabu Gray and Russet Brown. Legs and feet. Perhaps. Why am I going to Lanasia? I guess just because I know where things are in Lanasia. Don't know another place. Emperor's New Gloves. Jesus Christ, it sounds horrible. Right. So I'm seeing if I have some Gabu Gray, Russet Brown, Sunset Orange. I guess orange would be brown. I don't know. Olapop. They always got so many cool things in here. Snow White. I don't know what the hell Animos is. Take random garbage. Sure. What an excellent time we've had. Random housing crap. Ooh. So we want brown beet. Sure. We want gray. Oh. Legs. Do not possess. Oh, here we go. Now my armor is not gonna match, but oh well. The Emperor's new gloves is naked gloves, which is funny. Ha ha ha. Bum, 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 ba-dum, bum, bum, ba-dum, bum, bum, ba-da-ba-dum. Judge me. Without further ado, let the judging begin. Fashion is everywhere. Alright, real quick. Spend a hot second. Oh, mine. Stupid. Busted robot. Bum, 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 bum. Okay. Yeah. How much stuff do I have? The fuck? Oh my god. The wrong way. isn't a teleporter down here. Okay. Fair enough, I guess. Nothing is being printed still. Connecting to a socket. Starting Python WebSocket server. Yeah. I think that's all in. Starting Python WebSocket server. Yeah, that's in the node code. WebSocket, also in the node code. Find connected transcription. WebSocket connection established. Also in the node. Oh wait, I got a bunch of printouts now. Python standard out, initializing WebSocket, starting WebSocket. WebSocket server started on blah blah blah. Connection established. Smiley face. Received message. Holy crap. Processing message. Standing up. AI chat. Blah blah blah. Okay. Yeah. These are the messages. Well, it's printing, so that's cool. As soon as I turn on stream, I just want it to be seen. Alright. Keep running that a little bit. See what happens. This time without all the debug messages. Put forward this thing. Close to the throne, which is one I kind of want. What are these printouts? What are... not quite what it... One of those things is literally just a dumb bug. Oh. Why is this like this? guess I'll show what I'm doing. Oops. Semicolon is not what I meant to press. Huzzah. Now I'll go some quests. Or I could do a leap of faith. Exciting. See what our pet is for today. Magni. Okay. Gazebo to call our own. And what else? Did a Hildebrand? Mr. Hildebrand. They spoke silently. Very cool. If only we had the testimony of a concerned citizen, which could conveniently direct us to the villain's precise location. Yo. The Gransirs are holed up in a building to the south of the markets. Good show, Fluffy. There, that's the one. Come, let's inform the others. Bum, bum, bum. Microphone's all buckered up again. It seems that no one is home. There is naught we can do but wait then. Papa Hildy, Papa Hildy. I just want to say that I really like this place. I think that you and me and Mama Nashu could have lots of exciting adventures if we stay here. You may be right, Gi. This community seems to have fostered an enlightened, free society, welcoming of honest souls willing to work and contribute to the greater whole. Did anyone happen to see a gazebo on the way in? As I live in Hildebrand, Helidor Maximilian Manderville. Could that be? I say, could that be Slowfix Coin Toss? Do you know this Gobby, Inspector? I most certainly do. Why, Master Slowfix was my very first employer. When traveling through Thanalan long ago, Gobby Flock was waylaid by Uplander bandits. With no jingly shine to pay brass blades, we had no way to backtake goods. Until we make busy deal with Gentleman Uplander, that is. With fastness he finds Uplander bandits and brings much bangy boom, and returns to goodly Gobby's missing goods and great justice. Henceforth, Slowfix gains new appreciation for Uplanders, but for chance encounter with Gentleman Uplander, he never conceives of egalitarian utopia. One may even claim Hildy a founding father of Idleshire, with metaphorical tongue flaps, that is. Ha ha ha. Oh, the memories. It's a near thing. The bandits were clever enough to see through my ingenious disguise as an innocent milkmaid. But in my haste to escape, I tripped over a barrel of fire sand, and as they say, boom gobby doom. I don't know who says that, but sure. No busy deals for the wicked. No busy deals indeed. But leaving that delightful anecdote aside, ye gods, Master Slowfix, just looking at what you and your flock have made of these runes is making me big eyes. Psh, Gobby flock has come long way since wandering days. But we have not forgotten Gentleman Uplander's kindness. Slowfix is here to offer hand lending. Well, far be it from me to refuse. My son Gigi has grown quite fond of your magnificent city, and so I should like to stay here with him and my assistant for a time. We would not require much in the way of accommodations. A humble gazebo, for example, would more than suffice. Why settle for gazebo when perfectly good estate right behind you? Residents of building in arrears and Slowfix happy to evict them. But we were pursuing the fiends who lived here on suspicion of defrauding young women. Fraud in Slowfix's egalitarian utopia? This he will not abide. All the more reason to let Gentleman Uplander and his flock stay instead of Grand Sirs. No need for jingly shine either. Huzzah! A giant gazebo to call our own. I do not know what to say. Thank you, Master Slowfix. Thank you. No need for teary-eyed tongue flaps. Gobbyflock is possessed of moral obligation to repay Gentleman Uplander for past generosity. Enjoy new gazebo, and good luck with hunt for Grand Sirs. Why did I only get one print? Papa Hildy, since this is our gazebo, is it okay if I draw our family crest on it? I can think of no better way to celebrate this joyous occasion, and perhaps draw the ira of our new home's former tenants. Come, let us go and purchase some paints together. This gazebo shall be your canvas. I kinda love them as a family. Now he's gone and gotten himself a sodden gazebo? Bloody hells, if he really thinks I'm going to let him keep on playing at being a father. Their slapstick shit is mostly shit, but when it comes to family humor, slapstick is pretty good. What are we doing? Okay, so he's part of the family crest. It's just a kind of bad picture of the three of them. Alright, sure. Still no sign of the notorious Grand Sirs. I dare say we're going to need more paint. I don't know what that shape is. Oh, much as it pains me to admit it, a gentleman's stamina is not without limits. I dare say I could do with a spot of tea. Hey, Inspector, is it just me, or have those two been looking at us for the past few minutes? Oh, 'tis quite normal behavior for my adoring fans, I should think. When finally presented with an opportunity to meet their idol in the flesh, all too many succumb to their fear and flee. Or maybe, just maybe, they're the Grand Bloody Sirs. Come on, they're getting away. Alright, and instead of doing that, I'm gonna figure out some coding. What? I don't want that one. I want this one, but much smaller. Ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba. Bum-ba-da-ba-dum. Great. So I guess the way I want to check this is over here. Output push. Process out. There's a lot going on there. This text is output. Dum bum ba dum. Alright, I guess I can go back to playing video games now. Where am I going? At some point I should figure out my shitty sound problems. Yeah, okay, it makes it all the way through, but it's just regurgitating exactly what I say send to it. Huh. Wrong door. Hearken to me, you dastardly rapscallions. You have nowhere to run. Reveal yourselves at once. Zoom in and pan. I shall not ask you again. Come forth, grand sirs. Name yourselves and answer for your misdeeds. Ye gods. It's hard to know if they're just old and the game made them unnecessarily ugly, or they're supposed to be old and ugly. Slayer of 1,000,000 worms, the silver spear which hath pierced the very heavens, Urland. Master of magics ancient and awesome, the divine hand which hath defeated all maladies, saved sentience and incontinence, Gunspart. Sentience. What the hell is sentience? Grand Sirs, Excelsior! I don't know whether to laugh or to cry. Mayhap both. Grandsires, Grand Sirs, you stand accused of willfully and unlawfully convincing young maidens of Ishgard to attend private parties under false pretenses, thereby inflicting upon them terrible financial and emotional distress. I, Hildebrand, agent of inquiry, inspector extraordinaire, am come on behalf of these poor defenseless innocents, and to see that no others are made to suffer as they did. Now, lay down your arms and surrender yourselves into my custody. Ha! The audacity of this boy. You should feel ashamed of your words and deeds. You will rue this day, and rue it hard. I think I just like Nashu's earnest. I think that's really the thing. Gods, how I've missed this. The air streaming past, the blood pumping, the taste of copper on my lips, the slight dizziness. It was on a day like this that we met, wasn't it? And when we soared into those azure skies, we never truly came back down. What is happening right now? Do mine eyes deceive? Pig's knee of my heart, descended from Halone's halls to guide me to her bosom? Pig's knee? My beloved, my everything, long have I waited for this moment. Take me in your arms once more and lift me higher, higher, higher. Higher, higher, higher. What a weird turn this story has taken. Orland, Orland, Orland. Okay, sure. Alas, poor Orland. I knew him not in the slightest, but he seemed a decent man, chicanery and attempted murder notwithstanding. You'll rue this day, and rue it hard. Pew! It's an impressive jump height. Wait, I've seen this before. All too recently. Yes, anyway, he's only mostly dead. If the Master of Magic's ancient and awesome here acts with all haste, the man may yet be saved. Has he forgotten where he is? Oh, you're referring to me. I see, I see. With all haste, was it? Yes, yes, I'll get right on that. O mournful voice of creation, send unto me a creature of the abyss, my thrall to command, that I may smite. Wait, that's no good. Let me see. Something of a rather less controversial tradition. Yes, something with more pep. A vortex of biting winds to rend the flesh. And smite my foes. Got him. Foes? I thought you were friends. Saint Rennet, bugger me with a bleeding guyball. My back, my back. It would seem I've underestimated you lot. That makes two of us? Enough. Leave them be, or do you not care what becomes of the mammoth? Gigi, but when? How? I thought I recognized you, first in Ishgard, then in Idleshire. You've been following us since we left the capital. Bearers of faces fair and fearsome, the midnight shadow which hath deceived kings and queens. Doris. You can't possibly have been so naive as to think we'd not see through your ridiculous disguises. And yet here you are, so effortlessly and easily lured into my trap. For which we are most grateful, mind. My companions are hardly cut out for life on the road. All has been in preparation for this moment. The parties, the petty schemes. From the first, the objective of this grand design has been this singular mammoth. I swear to you, if you harm Gigi in any way, we have no desire to hurt the boy. We but require his help to reclaim that which is rightfully ours, our youth. Confound it, I can't see. Damn, they're very slowly getting away. Papa Hildy. Gigi. Stay strong, my son. I swear I shall find you. But later, because gotta let them lose you first. 12. Strike me down for a fool. So desperate was I to seize the grandsires that I failed to discern their true intent before 'twas too late, and now poor Gigi is in their clutches. What if I never see my beloved son again? I suppose we ought to be prepared for the worst. They could be halfway to Radzatan by now. Very much doubt that, given that they were moving at an adamantoise's pace. The little milksop's right. Let's get after the buggers. Huh, that's what my mentor used to call me. Among other things, oh, the memories. Alright. Time for another programming break. So, what do you have to say, ChatGPT? Seems that the output you're seeing is the exact input being fed into blah blah blah. No response is being generated. This issue suggests that the process message function might not be invoking the model or handling the conversion chain as expected. Here are the potential causes and fixes. Issue could be with how the AI model, Ollama LLM, is invoked in conversation chain.py. Need to ensure that the model is correctly generating responses based on the input. Instructions aren't being returned directly. Check the function where the model is invoked. Call model. Wait, where are we looking? Conversation chain, huh? Check the function. Call model. Ensure that the model is processing the input and returning a response. I mean, it's clearly not, but it's saying model invoke. You may want to ensure that the conversation chain is properly set up and that the AI model is invoked with the correct input message. Here's an update to the relevant part of the conversation chain file to ensure the model is invoked correctly and returns a valid response. Human message, memory saver, start, message state graph, Llama model path, and debug. Workflow, message state, model. I mean, that's possible that that's busted. There is no models. So that could be the issue. So I don't need the face thing anymore. There's not another place where it could be memory. What the heck? Do I need to download a model to get this working? Does it make more sense to use Olama or Hugging Face? Uh, Assuming we are using Olama, what should we change? So the llama model path code is functional. Uh-huh. Where can I get Llama 3.2? Can Olama install it? Uh, mm, well, I could see how that would cause it to not change anything. There is no model. It's the Manusia come to light. We'll focus on sustaining the Arcasadora. The rest of you must keep going. Onwards and upwards. Deriva. Dance until death claims you. Chosen Defiance. Oop. Tifa's Lockhart. Is a healer. I guess we're stopping Tifa from being a healer. pressing these 3 buttons forever. All 80s. Pretty good. What do I do? I get those. Activate that chubby god. No matter the cost, we must protect the tower. Harbingers elect. They were elected to be harbingers. Assist in your desecration. Join with me, sisters. ChatGPT, please look up these things.
Is everyone all right?
We fortified the captives with what magics we could. Have the defenses been disabled? All appears quiet for the moment.
The lower floors were disturbing enough, but this place feels wrong. The ether is heavy and thick, like wading through a quagmire.
Quagmire.
I believe we stand in the tower's beating heart. What sayest thou, Y'shtola?
I see it. Ether siphoned from the land runs up through the spire, flowing to a single point. This is the core we seek. Yet something is off. As large as this structure is, it siphons far more ether than is required to sustain it. 'Tis as if the core is feeding on the energy, consuming it. I need to take a closer look.
Nom nom.
Curious. There is something there embedded inside the core. A man's limb.
This is what we came to destroy?
Yes, if you would be so kind.
And that should be the end of it.
What now?
My theory that the tower might come crashing down following the core's destruction doth appear to be correct.
Bully for you! And how are we supposed to survive the fall?
What of the prisoners below?
The floor beneath our very feet dissolves. Brace yourselves!
I pray I'm not too late.
That's kind of funny.
Ugh, what happened? Where are we?
By my reckoning, we're still on the island where the tower stood. But 'tis as if it never existed. Hardly a scratch. But how?
G'raha wove a levitation spell at the last moment. Large enough to catch everyone, it would seem.
That explains the lack of obvious injuries.
The expenditure of so much ether has taken its toll. He will need plenty of rest, but should otherwise be none the worse for wear.
then the immediate problem is what to do with our new friends here. They'll be much changed for their time in the tower. Even if their bodies are intact, I doubt we could say the same for their minds.
Angelo and I will take care of that.
I have every faith in you, Alize, but there are just too many for you to treat alone.
We'll send at once to Eorzea for more Porksies, and call on the local mages to lend a hand.
Hail, Scions! We were watching the tower when it simply disappeared. What happened here?
I did
The
it.
threat is banished, and thy people delivered. They are, however, in need of treatment, and we of a secure locale and helping hands to assist us in its provision.
You shall have all this and more. Come, let us convey these unfortunate souls to the city.
Alright. A wee bit of programming. Hut, 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 hut. I guess I'm not using a llama anymore. Is that true? We'll see, I guess. Load module. Is this entirely new? Guess so. What does it do? Yeah, it sets model. Also sets a tokenizer and stuff. Yeah, give it a shot. Bum, 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 bum. All right, did that. action that invokes the model and returns responses. Data WebSocket. Process and respond is different. Am I getting rid of? No. Call model. Test the pipeline. To test the model's performance in your pipeline, you can use simple curl commands to send messages and receive responses. Oh, I see. Oh. Turned off the server so I could install the thing. Alright, now that is testing. Oh. Wait. Econ refused. Not this time. Okay. Alrighty. What we got going on, Thancred? The liberated prisoners are being transported to Radzet Hand for treatment. Alisei and Y'shtola will oversee the administration of the tempering treatment, with support from those who know a healing spell or two. We'll go and join them in the city once you've had a moment to catch your breath. Had enough rest, have you? You never were one for being idle. Right. Farshan bade us come to Maguta at our earliest convenience. The others will join us there once they have finished tending to the prisoners. Oh, wait. On second thought, you and Estinian should go on ahead. I need to make a quick detour by the Great Work. We left Graha in the alchemist's care, you see. Best to fetch him before he's crammed into a specimen jar. Just you and me, then. The guardsman at the gate should wave us through. Stomp, stomp, stomp. Update WebSocket message handler to check for the presence of the message key. Okay. So I'll turn debugging back on. I'm a wee bit sore. For some reason. Lusaka. Ashrakumara. Bump, 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 bump. Play cards against a random person. It's been a hot minute since I played the card game. I have a bunch of new cards. I think I will play the card game. Just do a quick little detour. Get the new. Fight me. No one can be angry with me if it's only a short break. Come on, let's play around. Possible prize. Card, I guess. Do the recommended, because I don't want to look at and read a bunch of shit. Blue turn. Both decks are placed face up. If the match ends in a draw, you decide match is played. Okay. One card is played. If two or more of the sides are touching other cards, and the rings of those sides are identical to those on the sides of the card played, other cards are flipped. Jeez. Where the hell this thing is? Oh, that's the Mega Sisters, and I just got that. Ultima High Seraph. This thing is unknown. Yeah. Slow your roll. $28 points. Well, that can go to plan. Just the story of my life, come to think of it. Rough, dude. Message key is missing in the incoming data. Message key. So when I send a message to Python, stringify an input. Honored Scions, you are free to enter at your leisure. As I cannot leave my post, I'm afraid you must make your own way. Should you require directions in the city, the sentry stationed at the fountain atop the steps should be glad to assist you. So, input, which is this object. The pluralized message for whatever reason. Great. Though I have been to Radzatan before, this place is a veritable maze. Rather than risk getting lost, we had best ask for directions from this sentry at the fountain. Lead the way, and don't expect me to act as your tour guide like certain others. any enemies here. It's the Pokey Stick Brothers. Actually need to not send this as I'm checking my API key. Face.co. How do I get a token? There we go. Last two used 2 minutes ago. Why did this token not work? Eh. Okay. Hugging face. access token. Access token from to the Hugging Skull. Token is in dot slash beta slash place. Okay. See what I'm doing again. Yep, that's correct. Modify your load model. Transformers. Oh, I need JSON. Load the Hugging Face token. I don't think I'm getting rid of workflow. Load model. It's my daily best viewers spam. Okay. Ah, Master Fluffy, I presume. I understand you are here for an audience with the satrap. If you require directions to Megaduta, I should be glad to provide them. Satrap's residence is situated in Dharma, the highest part of Radzat-Han. To get there, I would ordinarily recommend a route that takes you by the bazaars in the city's north. Due to the state of alert, however, most businesses are currently closed and the Aetheryte disabled. As such, I will provide you with an alternate path. Please ascend the steps next to this fountain, then continue left. There will be more steps, and upon ascending them, you will emerge on Paxa's path. Proceed through the large door on the right, and you will arrive at Ruvegida Fibers. Within, you will find another sentry, who will give you further guidance. Okay, in other words, we head up. Sounds straightforward enough. Oh, I can talk to a Stanian over here. Ah yes, I know about this portal. It leads to a nearby isle, the treasure vault of one of Radzat Han's wealthiest families. They took the god of luck for their guardian, on account of which they occasionally open up a section of their vaults for aspiring treasure hunters to try their own luck, or so they say. There are also coffers hidden across the land that act as portals. Find one and you gain access to the vault. Something to bear in mind in case you exhaust your funds while on the road. 'Tis a troublesome experience, as I can personally attest. Oops. Forgot to include OS. Seems relevant. Okay. And away we go. I really do wish I had my sound under control. Envy. Ah, fuck. Why is my token not working? Oh. 3 be instruct, not 1 be instruct. Interesting, interesting. Right. Hello. Heading to Maguduta, are you? In that case, please follow this hallway to my right and go through the door at the top of the stairs. You'll emerge at the entrance to the airship landing, where another sentry should be on hand to assist you. Incidentally, if you ascend the steps to either side of me, you'll find the workshops of Ravuda Fibers. Though you're free to observe the artisans, take care not to lose your way. Okay. Ah, Thavnarian weave. Hard to imagine more vibrant stuff. I dare say Aymeric would be partial to the gold thread. And the blue, of course. He loves his blue. Never put much thought into what I wear. A spare set of clothing is usually all I carry, and if that isn't enough, I can always obtain something locally. To your right, not to the right. Yeah, okay. Okay. You're here for an airship. I'm afraid all flights have been suspended until further notice. So the state of alert is still in effect. Perhaps it's for the best. That aside, we're not here for an airship. We have business at Magaduta. Oh, in that case, permit me to direct you. From here, it's quite simple, really. Ascend these steps, and then continue straight ahead, and across the bridge. You cannot miss it. Frickin' fricker. What's happening here? Why is this not working? Oh, maybe it's because this studio business. Yeah, I'm using Meta, not whatever the hell you were talking about. Oh. Bum, 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 bum. Okay, loaded a thing. Nice. I remember passing by here with Varshan. Situation being as it was, he regretted not being able to show us the sights. Life has yet to return to normal here, but when it does, you ought to pay another visit. Though the city is confusing, the food is quite good. I'm partial to Hamsa myself. The meat's surprisingly tender and flavorful. Squawk, squawk. How do I get up there? I'll probably have to get up that thing. Fascinating. Bum 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 bum. Bahafiras. Several. How do I get up there? Okay, so I got some responses from the model, but it is not at all what I was hoping for. Which is too bad. Suppose part of the problem could be the transcription, but I'll mess around with it in a bit. Greetings and welcome to Maguta. May I inquire after your business? We are members of the Scions of the Seventh Dawn, come at the invitation of His Excellency. Ah, of course. We have been expecting you. I will show you into the audience chamber. If you would please follow me.
Are we the last to arrive? I hope we've not kept you waiting.
Not at all. Your comrade is feeling better, I trust.
Much better, thank you. Harnish remedies are certainly potent in more ways than one.
One becomes accustomed to the taste, although I hope you never have cause to do so. Pray, take your ease.
Full glad I am to see you all unharmed.
Valiant scions, for your heroism, you have my boundless gratitude. You cast down that dire tower and set free its hapless captives. You cleanse their souls of its corrupting influence. No words of thanks will suffice. In place of platitudes, I offer a bounty of warding scales. Pray accept your due reward, along with the goodwill of Radzat-Han.
Alchemists throughout the land were put to work in the forging of your talismans. The finished ones have been collected, and now await you at the High Crucible of Alchemia. Present this letter when you are ready to take them into your possession.
Okay.
We are humbled by your generosity. Know that the inventive wisdom of Radzat-Han will be vital in restoring serenity to our star.
Every single one of those scales came from you, didn't they? You must still be in such pain.
"'Tis of no moment. A mere annoyance compared to the dreadful suffering inflicted upon this land and its people.
Albeit brief, my involvement in the Dragonsong War afforded me a glimpse of the myriad sorrows which consumed both dragon and man. Though you were half a world away, such tragedies as befell your kin must have affected you deeply. And yet, you chose to live among men.
In the age when that conflict first bloomed, my choice had already been made. In some distant place, man slew dragon, and dragon slaughtered man. Yet no hate could I muster for those smiling faces which did look to me for guidance. Not even my brother's righteous rage could rally me to his cause. I huddled here, secret and still, hoping against hope that which I had built would remain untouched by the chaos and carnage.
Twould seem we share the same desire for peace, great Vritra. To that end, I wonder if we might trouble you with another question. The Telophoroi are intent on recreating the final days, an apocalyptic event which we know to predate the sundering of the star. As the longest lived among us, know you aught of this terrible cataclysm?
Nay. When war and strife drove my sire from his home, he crossed the great expanse with only our unhatched eggs as company. He alighted upon a shattered source, its 13 reflections long since scattered beyond the rift. Of events preceding his arrival, he knoweth naught, save that which Hydralin hath deigned to disclose.
I see. So again, 'tis the inscrutable Hydaelyn to whom you must look for answers.
Inscrutable.
Seek you to divine the will of this star? If so, I have a tale which may afford you some small comfort. 'Tis a story from my youth, many, many years ago. To my sire, I once posed the question, of all the stars in the sky, why didst thou settle upon this one? To which Midgardsormr did reply, 'twas the last bastion of hope. He believed so long as Hydaelyn endured, so too might dragonkind. Solemn and portentous were his words. What deeper meaning they held, I could not, dared not pursue. 'Tis a stone I've left unturned ever since. Yet take you solace in the knowledge that whatsoever Hydaelyn does strive towards, 'tis an ideal which hath earned my sire's conviction.
Thank you, Vritra. You've given us warm reassurance in a world gripped by cold uncertainty.
While I'm sure we all have a great many questions, I think it's time we collect the talismans and be on our way. Our fight against the Telophoroi is far from finished.
We must take our leave, but please do inform us if we can provide any further assistance.
Funny little curtsy.
Prithee, a moment. There is one whom my sire hath judged worthy of honor and respect. The one known to men as Eorzea's champion. This hero of renown and rumor, 'tis thee.
Okay. Midgardsormr and I have crossed paths, yes.
I knew it to be so. From man and dragon alike have I learned of thine exploits. 'Twas a revelation most pleasing that thou, a child of man, had gained Midgardsormr's trust. But alongside mine elation runneth a rivulet of dread. For upon thy life's reel wind too many threads of fate, power, wheel enmeshed with woe. Amidst this tangled knot thou shalt know no rest. 'Tis an endless confluence of forces, a struggle without surcease. More terrible still is the attrition wrought upon thy companions, as they are swept up in the storm of thine existence. Take heart and protect them well. They will be your strength and your salvation. The hope thou wilt need come the end. Even cowering behind my curtain, I know the suffering of the powerful. I have watched my siblings driven mad by loss. Thus do I exhort thee to spare no effort to keep thy loved ones safe.
Apologies. We hadn't meant to interrupt.
It's just that we do have a history of suddenly collapsing, and when you didn't follow us out...
'Tis I who must apologize. I have detained your champion overlong with idle chatter. Go. At war's end, I pray I welcome thee back into my hall, where together with thy joyful comrades, you may toast your triumph.
Okay. On a whim, I feel like getting all this stuff opened. This kind of looks like Kravitz, the Dragoon from Legends of Dragoon. Interesting sword. The sword doesn't look like Kravitz. So, what were you and Vitra talking about? Nothing. Very well, if you say so. The others have gone ahead to the High Crucible. Let's catch up to them. The attendant was kind enough to give me directions to the High Crucible. First, let us return to the Mulberry Orchard. here, we're supposed to follow the path left and past the mulberries. Okay. Want to know how to get up on top of this building. But that's okay. That's okay. Where the street turns, into the door straight ahead, then descend the steps. I thought the Crystarium was confusing, but it doesn't compare to Razet Han. The architecture and decorations make it even harder to get your bearings. Anyway, let's see where this door takes us. Some secret to this platforming situation. And here is the Aetheryte Plaza. So far, so good. There isn't much further to go. From here, we just need to cross to the other side of the hall, and pass through the larger of two doorways. The High Crucible lies beyond. I suspect the others have already collected the warding scales. Come, let us join them. Boo. This way is some hunt board shenanigans. What's back here? Hall of the Radiant Host. Probably gonna end up here for a quest, but whatever. Chameleon. Oh, I have debug still on. Yeah, makes sense. We're last, of course, but at least we found the place.
These are the talismans we were promised.
Yes,
You
and I made
saw?
a quick count. There are far more than we could have hoped for. Enough to outfit an entire company of soldiers, in fact. Considering the involved process, that they were able to manufacture so many in such a short span of time is nothing short of a miracle.
Once we have distributed them to our allies in Eorzea and the Far East, we'll have a fighting chance to bring down the other spires, just as we did with the Tower of Zot.
Or we could use them to invade Garlemald proper, and strike directly at the Telophoroid's base of operations. Of course, we would need to consult with various Alliance leaders before such a drastic measure could even be contemplated. To which end, I could set out forthwith and present the idea to each of our allies in person.
Pray allow me to undertake some few of those journeys. I find myself restless and in need of purposeful duties.
I can head eastward. Bosnia and Dalmasca are just a short hop from here. And Doma's shinobi network should come in handy for passing on the word.
We shall share the burden then. Meanwhile, I think it best that you and the others take the talismans back to the Baldessian Annex. We must keep them safe and secure until we've decided upon a course of action.
I don't know if Sharlayan is the place to be safe and
Please,
secure, but
I must speak with you.
yo.
Nidana, you're awake.
Yes. When I spoke with the carer at my bedside, she told me that one of the scions, a young woman, had cleansed me of the tower's corruption. It seems I'd been asleep ever since the treatment. But when I awoke and learned you were all still here, I knew I had to come.
As you said, Nidana was captured only recently. Such a brief exposure is swiftly cured, so I tended to her before we gathered at Megaduta.
And I am truly grateful that you did. I cannot thank you enough. All of you, for everything you've done. Destroying the tower, rescuing our people. You've saved Thavnair from an awful fate.
True, true.
Yet who hath truly saved whom? Due in no small part to thine
the scale.
inspirational courage, the alchemists were successful in reproducing warding scales of proven efficacy. Replications of thy work now stand ready to travel across the seas, unto the hands of those who might wield them against this rising evil.
The talisman? Is this true? Oh, I was so groggy from sleep. I didn't even think to ask. Oh, our great work sent across the seas. It was worth it. Oh, it was all worth it.
Yeah.
Look at that. Its color is completely changed. What do you have there?
It's a flower.
How unusual. I wonder if the effect is a reaction to Akasha.
I'm afraid I'm not familiar with that term.
Akasha? It is one of the unseen energies defined by Harnish alchemical theory. Though a gross oversimplification, some describe it as an essence influenced by feelings.
You imply that it is distinct from ether?
Foreign scholars often conflate the two, but we see them as separate concepts. Ether is an energy which permeates the land. It exists within animals, objects, even the air we breathe,
affecting all through which it flows. Akasha, on the other hand, exists in a domain beyond our reach. A gift bestowed from on high, or torn from the heavens in some traditions. Akasha can neither be created nor destroyed. It is beyond our power to purposefully alter or manipulate. The only thing observed to influence it is an abundance of, I want to say, spiritual emotion. As a veteran of the battlefield, surely you've experienced moments of desperation or exaltation when you've transcended the usual limits of your capabilities.
Have I?
That is a manifestation of Akasha, the invisible essence harnessed by heart, mind, and unyielding spirit.
I really must hear
so.
more about this theory. Our disciplines are based entirely upon the idea that ether is the fundamental form of all energy.
I'm glad my haphazard explanation has piqued your interest. But even for us, Akasha is a somewhat abstract field of study. A lack of practical application lends itself poorly to formalized research. Which is why my analysis of your flower can amount to little more than idle speculation. I am sorry.
Nonsense! You have nothing to be sorry for. Your insight is much appreciated.
Shall we depart for Sharlayan then? I will see to it that the talismans arrive at the Annex.
And we will be in touch once our talks are concluded. I suggest you rest while you can. From here onward, sleep is bound to be in short supply.
Just occurred to me that I want to get something off Amazon. Bum. Whoa, that is quite a machine. Old Sharlayan. Alright. I want to play that Zelda game. Interesting. Okay, so perhaps automatic game capture exploded it. Bum, 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 bum. What did I have on the top before? Oh yeah, I was doing creepypasta. Sure. It's been just long enough that I'm no longer being recommended. Halloween stuff. Whoa, that thing had some bass.
At the start of the pandemic, I decided to get back into retro gaming. I wanted to catch up on my backlog and try some gems from the past. I posted about it on Reddit and got a few suggestions on what to check out. Using an emulator, I could try pretty much anything. This one guy suggested I play Hatchman Cove. I never heard of it, and I couldn't find it anywhere. There was an inactive Steam page for it, but there was no available download. Instead, I opted for another game by the same developer called Changelings. I don't think a lot of people have heard of this game. It's a game for the PS2, but I don't know if it was ever physically published. I found it for the emulator though. Changelings actually had a pretty clever concept. It was a sort of reverse game show. You are put in a position where your made-up friend, lover, or parent has been cloned. Every round you are faced with 4 identical copies of a person, and your task is to find the real one. You have to ask them questions to figure it out. You are asked several personal questions to calibrate what sort of answers you are supposed to look for. You can add as much data to your profile as you want. They got like 500 questions. Based on the number of questions you answer, you get a psychological profile. You can check it out on the main menu. The more data you provide, the deeper and more personal questions you can ask the clones. If you just answer a few, you can't really ask the clones that much, and it gets a lot harder. The first night I booted up Changelings was a lot of fun. Filling out your profile unlocked more and more cosmetics, so I made it a point to answer all of them. It took almost an entire night, but after that, the answers generated seemed eerily human. The game had a bit of an uncomfortable atmosphere. The colours were toned down, and the characters had this robotic auto-generated text-to-speech thing going on. It all took place in this sort of funhouse laboratory setting with strange mirrors and sterile walls. The main menu was a lab that you had to walk around in to get to options, start game, credits, and all that. Also, there were tank controls. Thanks, Resident Evil. Once I started playing the game, it became apparent that this wasn't just any old game. You could ask the clones weirdly deep questions, and they would answer as best as they could based on your profile, which meant that as much as you were playing against them, you were also playing against yourself. The better you knew your own profile, the easier it was to eliminate the clones. The clone, being a close friend, relative or lover, would know you better than a clone. So just seeing who knows you the best in certain ways is the way to go. For example, I asked the clones what my favourite type of sandwich was. I got 4 different answers. Your favourite is tuna and oregano. Your favourite is tuna and ham. Your favourite is tuna and mayonnaise. Your favourite is tuna and bell peppers. All
Really likes
answers
tuna.
were tuna, which is what I'd answered on my profile. But the second word? That wasn't part of it. But that's the tricky thing about this game. Based on your profile, it makes an estimate about what could be your favourite. So, thinking about it, I figured a mayonnaise tuna sandwich would be the correct answer, as it sounded the most true to me and my taste. Nothing was completely wrong, but that was the most right. Still, it was a bit of a gamble. Yeah, I won that round. Tuna and mayonnaise was spot on. The game figured this out by the sheer number of answers I provided. It knew my palate. I've since started making them regularly. It's like the game knew me better than myself. And that's the game. I got really into it. One thing about these older, unknown titles is that you actually have to discover a lot of it for yourself. There are no shortcuts or guides. I tried getting the best score, the most elaborate answers, making up the funniest questions, all kinds of stuff. But if the questions were too nonsensical, the game just wouldn't recognize them. You could use preset questions and just put in certain words like, what is my favorite X? What do you think of X? What was the name of my first X? That was the best way to get a good answer. You could make a completely custom prompt though, but you might get an error. Also, it was clunky as hell, as you couldn't use a keyboard or click the letters. You had to move with direction arrows and choose the letters one by one. The game doesn't just let you pick out the character you think is the real one. You must kill off the clones in elimination rounds. It wasn't graphic or anything. They'd just be taken to another room and you'd hear a scream. At the end of the round, with just one person remaining, your character steps into the room. If you got it right, they'll hug you, kiss you, or thank you. If you got it wrong, the character got this strange grinning expression on their face,
Not doing well.
and the screen would cut to black. Then your character would be the one who screams. By day 5, I discovered a glitch. You could bug out the game by putting a question within a question. If you did, the clones sort of spazzed out, and you got a full score as if you'd won the round. The score could be used to unlock cosmetics and new sets. It kinda messed with my score though. See, the game never really stops working in your profile. Whenever you answer a question, it analyzes it. If it recognizes what you're asking, it uses that information in establishing your profile. If you ask a lot of questions about your past, it might take that into account. Same with questions about work, relationships, the future, and other themes. The game really feels like it tries to get to know you. But with corrupted scores, the game started bugging out. For me, the strangest thing was starting a new round and the clones were just gone. Just an empty room, with no one there to answer my questions. Other times, all clones would just stand there with a big grin on their face, all saying the same answer. At one point, the clone backed out of the kill room and just got back in their seat without a head. Despite all this, I reluctantly got into it. It was strange to reverse answer questions about myself. It felt like I was teaching the game who I was. Hell, I don't even mind the bugged out stats. In some cases, it just added to the atmosphere. I took short breaks every now and then, but came back to try out a new strategy or to see if I could get a new unlock. I also got into the lore of the game, trying to find secrets hidden in the main menu room. There were a few folders and videos. Folders told a story of a pharmaceutical company who were trying to perfect an algorithm for spotting imposters. A series of in-game cutscenes told the story of a team who unleashed something horrible and were looking for a way to circumvent an upcoming disaster by building a protocol. The game took place in the 70s, so it got some of that analog horror vibe going. 2 weeks into playing it, on and off, I unlocked a character called the Boss, who was the final archetype of Changeling. Boss was by far the toughest one. She did this thing where all the clones had identical outfits, and they'd sometimes switch places if you weren't paying attention. Beating her was an absolute pain. It wasn't just about having a 1 in 4 chance of guessing right. She would sometimes actively make herself suspicious and then switch places with the original. It was, by all means, the equivalent of a boss battle. I tried using the glitch, but it just didn't work on her. All it did was throw me back to the main screen. I had to power through, grab my notebook, and actually make an effort. She was just odd. When you brought her clones into the kill room, there was no scream. It just got quiet and the lights flickered a bit. But Boss didn't thank you when you saved her. Instead, the lights just started to flicker and you're thrown back to the main menu. When I beat her, I got the final unlock, a character called Blameless. While other archetypes had icons of people when you start a new game, Blameless just had some sort of blue-tinted sunflower icon. The tooltip said, debug, while other tooltips had at least hinted at a viable strategy. As soon as I started it up, I figured something was wrong. The loading time was several minutes long, and once it loaded up, the game camera was stuck in another room. It took me a few seconds before I realized that the camera had switched to first person, and that I was actually in the interrogation room. To my sides were clones of my avatar, looking at me with those distorted pixel faces. On the other side of the window, I could see the white hair and dress of Blameless, motionless. It was all switched up. The game started asking questions for me to answer, forcing me to defend myself. I figured if I was honest and revealing, the game could figure out I was the real one. So I got into it. I did my best. But the questions were getting out of hand. Some of them were way too personal, and others were just strange. Asking me about my love life, my religion, my childhood trauma, my fantasies. At one point, I was asked the same question 4 times in a row. Would you kill for your god? At some point, I just felt uncomfortable playing. The clones in the room were staring at me with those creepy smiles. It was the middle of the night, and I'd been playing for hours. I decided enough was enough and stepped away to get a drink. I was standing in the kitchen, Coke in hand, when I heard it from the other room. I said, "Would you kill for your god?" I nearly choked on my soda. The game was paused. I had no idea how to beat Blameless. I'd lose over and over again, and I'd see my character taken into the kill room. The screen would just go black, and then I'd be back at the main menu. I tried adapting to her tactics and listened for clues, but she was so unpredictable. The clones would copy part of what I answered and switch a few words up. Blameless would get it wrong over and over and over. Was she bad at the game, or did she just want to kill me? Maybe for her, the game was killing the real one instead of saving them. If so, they were really good at it. Or was my character a clone all along? At one point, I just stopped playing. I wasn't invested enough to get this frustrated. I gotten all I could out of changelings, so it was time to move on. However, as I started looking for the next game to play, my phone dinged. Text message. Game over. I turned off my phone and backed away from the computer. I just stood there, panting. Unknown number. No way, no way. I uninstalled everything. It had to be a virus. I turned my phone off and fetched my backup flip phone. I ran a malware check on my computer, locked all my windows, closed the curtains. Had someone used the game to spy on me, like a password phishing thing? It wasn't unheard of, and some of my questions could be used to guess the answer to my secret questions. I got paranoid. I stopped at random times while showering, just to hear if someone was sneaking around my apartment or looking through the mail slot. I thought about calling the police, but seeing as how emulators can be a bit of a grey legal area, I wasn't too sure about it. It'd be too hard to explain. It was midnight when my flip phone rang. Unknown caller. I thought about not answering, throwing it away and just not looking back. But I had to know more. Who was this person, and what did they want? What did they really want? So, I picked it up. Game over. Same robotic text-to-speech function, same tone of voice. Then the line went completely quiet. No breathing, no moving, nothing. Just a faint electric buzz. I just stood there, trying to control my breathing. I felt dizzy, as if I'd suddenly run a marathon. What do you want from me? I asked. To find you. Just play without me. We found you. What? You answered. Well. I thought about my words carefully, but my mind was racing. Who was I talking to? Who was behind the voice? And how could they reach me so easily? Game over. Wait, what? What do you... Click. The line went dead, and the phone shut down. Then, my computer shut down. Then the lights, the fridge. Hell, the street outside went black. I scrambled for a flashlight, and I heard something. Footsteps. Someone was at the door. I couldn't find my damn flashlight. I considered my options. I live on the second floor, so a jump might just break my legs. That won't get me anywhere. I didn't have a firearm, but I could get a knife. With my phone dead, I couldn't call the police.
What the fuck?
I had to do 1,000 things at once, but that wouldn't change that someone was trying to get in. Before I could fetch a single racing thought, the door swung open. For a few seconds, I just held my breath and listened. There were several people, and I was just standing around the corner, waiting for something to happen. I felt so goddamn powerless. This was my home, my space. As they got closer, I backed away. When they suddenly stopped, I realized I'd been heard. I had too many options to choose from, but I settled on the balcony. I burst through the balcony door. The air was surprisingly cold, and there was frost on the ground. My heart was beating so fast, and I was hyper-focusing on anything and everything. I could barely see anything from the cloud of my breath, but I could see two people on the other side of the door. They were me. I thought it was a broken reflection at first, my mind playing tricks on me. But no, it was me. Different sets of clothes and different hair, but two variations of me. One of them was taking something from my computer, but the other just stared at me with a tilted head. He made no attempt to open the balcony door. If he did, I wasn't sure I'd be able to stop him. We just looked at one another. I could see my mannerisms, my quirks, the way they moved, the way they looked at me. I'd seen it in the mirror every day. They were me. I hadn't even noticed I was screaming. The sound just escaped me. I almost fell over the side of the balcony, trying to get away. It was one of my neighbors who saved me. An old woman on the next balcony over, calling out to me, asking if I was okay, telling me she'd call the police, telling me to calm down, to talk to her. They're in there, I shrieked. I could barely speak. I pointed right at one of them, and he just tilted his head with a grin, the same creepy grin as in the game. This unrealistic, twisted, ear-to-ear parody of a face. He grabbed the balcony door and slid it ajar, easily. I put one leg over the railing. They weren't getting me. A broken leg or two was a small price to pay. "You're fine," he whispered, in my voice. "We know. You're okay." I could barely hear him over my breathing. I just shook my head. "I'm real," I said. "I'm real and you're not. You're not." He shook his head and closed the door. We exchanged a look. Seconds later, they were both gone. That was it. I told the police the intruders were masked. I told my neighbor I didn't know who they were. I told them I thought I'd been stalked online and that I didn't know what was going on. Which is true, I still don't. They haven't bothered me since. The game is just normal. It's like the corrupted file just reset itself. In every way, it just seems like everything has cleared itself up. But I don't think it's that easy. Something has changed since that night. Since playing Changelings. Sometimes, when I'm in the bathroom, I get this strange feeling, a mood. And when I look up, I'm grinning. Exactly the way they do.
Oh my god, he learned how to grin creepily.
Last spring, I graduated high school. We weren't planning any big parties or anything, partly because of the whole germ thing, and partly because we were never into big parties in the first place. When I say we, I mean me and my two best friends, Mia and Cooper. We weren't nerds, or if we were the socially acceptable type of nerds that had a lot of friends at school and rarely got picked on. We went with the flow, and that did sometimes include us going to games or parties, though usually we target smaller hangouts with people we could tolerate for a few hours. Most of the time though, it was just the three of us, and as we got closer and closer to graduation, our little circle of three seemed to involuntarily contract more and more almost like a clenching fist. Mia was going to college in Nevada. I was staying here. And Cooper, well, he wasn't sure yet, but the odds of him staying in state for school were getting slim. There was an unspoken tension between the three of us, a secret dread that said, you better spend time together while you can, because come the fall, you'll be all alone. It was silly, of course. We could still talk and visit, and we'd make new friends to keep us company while the three of us were apart. We all knew that rationally, but as the time ran down, I became acutely aware of how large my fear of losing them was, how powerful. So, we didn't go to parties, no, but we found excuses to do stuff all the time. Not just hang out, watch TV, play games and stuff, but actually do activities. It had started right after Christmas, and by May, we had found an impressive variety of stuff to do. Parks, state, national, and amusement. Fairs, both the carny type and medieval type. We had gone camping, hiking, fishing and swimming. There was a video of me rollerblading down a hill, though Mia missed when I wiped out to the bottom, and photos of us petting goats at the world's smallest petting zoo 2 counties over. It was literally just an old woman with 3 goats in a yard, but she'd posted an invitation on the internet to all visitors that were well behaved and brought some food for her goats out of a voluminous list of things her babies would eat. There had even been a brief flirtation with trying to find a haunted house earlier in the spring, but they weren't as easy to find as movies led you to believe, and we were all more than a little nervous about getting caught trespassing at some abandoned house. Again, nerds maybe, but not unreasonably so. But then, Mia brought up the idea of the clown car. She'd originally heard about it from a cousin, who heard about it. Well, you know how that goes. But then she spent some time digging on the internet and finally found some more info on it. Other people had played it before. And a couple of places there was some loose advice and rules for how it was played. Because it was, at least to some extent, a game. When she first told us about it, we just laughed. Told her it'd be a lot less trouble to just go into the bathroom with the lights up and say Bloody Mary 3 times. We might be scraping the bottom of the barrel, but spooky games with weird, needlessly complex rules, it seemed kind of a waste of time. It was always just people laughing or trying to scare each other, and when it was all done, we were left kind of disappointed, because, well, that's not the way the world really works. You could see the hurt look on her face. It had been there from the start, but me and Cooper were busy making jokes, so it took us a minute to catch on. She didn't suggest stuff often, and this was why. We were smartasses, and sometimes we got too rough with it. Cooper seemed to realise we'd pushed it too far just a couple of seconds before I did. Told her we were only kidding, and it sounded cool. If we could figure out a good spot for it, we'd do it that weekend. As it turned out, that was the easy part, because there had been an pair of violent deaths just outside of town. In August of 1982, John Sampson came home from a 12-hour shift at the quarry. He normally wouldn't leave his drug home, but the next morning, he had an early special delivery to a subdivision being built 50 miles up the road, and it was quick to have it ready and have to get it loaded the next day. Because, he figured, no one was going to try steal 40,000 pounds of sand and gravel parked in his driveway. When he got home, however, he found his driveway was already occupied. His brother, Bill Sampson, had come to visit John's wife while he was away. Story goes that he'd been visiting her regularly for some time, much to the delight of the neighborhood gossips. No one had thought to tell John about it though, so when he walked in on them, it was apparently quite a shock. I say that not because I know exactly what happened in there or what he was thinking, but because of what he did next. 3 days later, someone found them all in the middle of SR3, a service road for the gravel pits that hadn't seen much use since the late 70s. John and shot himself, but not before dropping off his final load. He'd apparently tied his wife and brother together, dragged them behind the truck, and unloaded all 20 tons on top of them while they were still alive. According to one quote from the local article, the rescue worker that found them said their mouths were filled with sand from screaming. The weird thing was, none of us had heard that story before Mia dug it up on the internet. It had happened before we were born, sure, but in a small town like this, local horror stories don't die from old age. Maybe it was kept more quiet because of the sexual component, or because the town was ashamed they hadn't done more to head things off before it reached that point. Or maybe it hid itself, a story to be forgotten until it was needed again, until some dumb kids wanted to play a game. The rules were simple enough. You get in a car and drive to the spot you've picked out. The spot needs to meet certain criteria for this to work. As you figured out, it needs to be at or near a spot where people died violently. It also needs to be on a road, and the road must be a dead end. At one point, SR3 had gone all the way through to the other side of the pits, but after the murders, they'd started ripping the road up. If the company hadn't gone belly up the following year, we might have all been gone long ago. But, as it was, 2/3 of it was left, including the spot where John emptied his truck onto his wife and brother. So, check on the violent death spot, double check on the dead-end road. The next thing is who went with you. This is kind of flexible depending on what kind of car you have. You can go by yourself, or you can go with other people. The key is that you have to leave at least one empty seat. Cooper had his mom's old Camry, so that was easy enough too. I was in the back, Mia was in front of me, and Cooper drove us out there. We went just after midnight. Mia had found conflicting accounts of if there was a specific time you had to do it, but generally they all overlapped between 1 and 3 AM, so we figured we were safe if we got the ritual done in that time frame. Because yes, there is a ritual. Of course there's a ritual, right? Specific mysterious things you have to do to get more invested and make it all feel real. Specific mysterious things that could be misinterpreted or done slightly wrong without you knowing it, giving an easy excuse when nothing happened. Because it was your mistake, right? Not the fact that it was all made up BS. If this sounds like I was highly skeptical, it's because I was. I acted pumped for Mia's sake, but the more we got into it, the more I just wanted it over with. We had to find the road, and then the murder spot on the road. This was actually the easy part, as Mia had done the necessary research beforehand. But then, we had to make sure the front of the car was pointed due north. We had to light 4 candles and put them at each of the cardinal directions: north, east, south and west. We had to have 3 more candles, 1 for each of us to light and hold. And then we had to roll down the windows, holding our candles in one hand while we hung the other hand out the window. Once all this was done, we would stare at our candle flames. This was apparently very important. We couldn't look away from a flame at any point or... We lost? We died? None of it was very clear, but it was definitely a bad thing. And as we looked at the flame, we would take turns saying the same phrase over and over. We invite you in. You could hear crickets on the air as we sat alone in the dark. I'd been convinced some of the candles would fall over or blow out, but so far they all seemed steady, despite the cool breeze that would sometimes rustle the trees and send a dry, dusty smell through the interior of the car. We'd never been on the road before, but driving up in the dark, we could see enough to make out the sharp drop-off on the right side of the road. The old pits were down there. I could picture a 100-foot drop ending in dirt and rocks and muddy water, but the height wasn't what bothered me. It was the black void I could feel out there, a great absence that didn't feel natural or friendly. I didn't understand it. I wasn't afraid of the woods or the dark, at least not more than normal. but this place didn't feel like normal woods at night. It felt like acid, like everything was burning and poison, being eaten away, and I blinked. What the hell was wrong with me? There was nothing weird out here. If I felt like anything was burning, it was from the pollen or smell of the candles. I needed to get myself together, quit letting this dumb game freak me out, and just get through it. You ready to start? Mia turned around and looked at me. Whoa, jeez, watch the candle. You're trying to set my head on fire? She yanked it back from where she had brushed the side of Cooper's arm as she looked back. Oops, sorry, Coop. Turning back to me, she nodded her head. Her eyes were dark and wide with my candlelight, and when she returned my smile, I could tell she was as nervous as I felt. She glanced at my window. You need to put your other hand out, remember? Nodding, I stuck my arm out, letting my hand dangle limply against the side of the car. Like this? She nodded and turned back around in her seat. I think we're ready. We invite you in. We invite you in. We invite you in. Mia started, then me, then Cooper. We said it in a circle over and over, maybe 5 or 6 times, and then we sat silent, tense and waiting, hoping for both something and nothing to happen. I tried to keep my eyes on my flame, but it was hard. The light was very bright in the relative darkness, and the urge to look round only grew stronger as the seconds stretched into minutes. Should we do it again? I could hear the cautious impatience in Cooper's voice. He wasn't trying to be a party pooper, but I could tell he was ready to be through with it. Mia let out a scream. What is it? The candle's flame bobbed in front of me as she shuddered. Something touched my hand. I felt it brush against my hand. Heart pounding, I shifted my light and gazed at the gap between her seat and the doors. Her arm was still hanging out. Mia, pull your hand in. She shook her head. No, it said in the rules you can't pull it in until it's done. You know, until all the lights are out.
Ow.
That was another part of all this. If it worked, you would see the candles outside the car go out one by one. After that, well, nothing really said what happened after that. We guessed after that you'd either see or hear something spooky, or you'd be done. But something touched her. It could be an animal or something. Pull your hand in. Cooper's voice was high and scared sounding, and I understood. I still didn't believe in ghosts or whatever, but there was something wrong here. Something dangerous. And we needed to leave. Outside, the candle on my side of the car went out. I can't. Mia's voice sounded long and strange, somewhere between a shout and a moan as she began to move around more. I can't move at all. Oh, I feel it touching me. Damn, I heard from Cooper, and I could see him yanking away from his window violently. His candle turned sideways and dumped a sizzle of melted wax onto the center console. He didn't make it very far though. I couldn't see clearly, but leaning forward, I could make out his arm still hanging out the window like it was pinned there. The candle on his side went out. Something is me too. Oh God, what? I can't. I glanced back over my shoulder, and I couldn't make out any flame behind the car anymore. I wanted to look further, but I could only wait. My arm was still out the window too. How is that possible? Why wouldn't I have thought to yank it back in once Mia started screaming? She was still screaming now. They both were. At first, I thought they were being hurt, but as they quieted down to softer mutters and moans, I realized they were just terrified. Trapped and terrified, almost out of their minds. I was scared too, but at least nothing had... I let out a gasp as something wet pushed its way between my fingers, running up the length of my palm, and then rasping against the web of skin between my middle and ring fingers before exploring the other divisions between thumb and index, ring and pinky. I wanted to scream, but the air seemed frozen in my lungs. I tried looking out the window, but I couldn't see anything now more than before, and I was too scared to try stick my head out. I just wanted my arm back and to get away from that terrible place. The candle in front of the car went out, and as it did, everything changed. The air grew oddly still. The thing licking my hand was gone. I could pull my arm in again, though I could feel a hardening film on the hand I'd had outside. Shuddering, I wiped it on my pants as I looked at Cooper and Mia. Their hands were back in too, and they looked as shell-shocked as I felt. I was terrified to move, to make a sound, but I knew waiting would be a mistake. So, voice slow, I leaned up between them and whispered, Let's go, now. I had time to see Cooper and Mia start to frantically nod in unison. And Mia suddenly froze. She had been looking at me. Now, she was looking past me, as though she saw something in the seat behind me. Blood thundering in my ears, I slowly turned to look back at the seat next to me. Something was sitting next to me now. In the inconsistent light of our candles, it almost looked like a person, though its face had no real features other than two narrow, dug-out slits that might have been its eyes. The thing's head, its entire body, looked like it was made out of mud, you see. Some thick, dark clay that leaned forward into the light, as to give us all a better look. We were transfixed in our terror for a moment, watching the monster as it hooked a thick finger across the lower part of his head and raked out a new furrow. A detached part of me realized what it was doing. It was making itself a mouth. The thing slung off the excess, striking the back of Cooper's seat with a wet squelch. It then worked its new features for a moment, as though testing the feel of it. A dark worm of a tongue wriggling free for a moment, before disappearing into the moving crack again. When it was satisfied, it spoke to us in a clear, deep voice that sounded both loud and far away, as though the creature was speaking to us from the other end of the well. Thank you for your invitation. We accept. I had a moment to realize Mia and Cooper's candles had gone out, and then the thing next to me leaned forward further and puffed out my own, plunging us into darkness. In some ways, as strange as it sounds, the dark was a relief. We were trapped in some kind of nightmare, and the less we had to see and endure before we woke up, the better. Because I had to remind myself, none of this was possible. None of this was real. That's when the thing beside me grabbed my shoulder, even as more hands began touching me from outside the car. I did move then, fighting to get free, to escape the things grasping me, even run away from the car if that's what it took to be free. But it was too strong. They were too strong, because the hands at the window weren't just hands anymore. Something was crawling through my window, settling its weight onto my back, even as I squealed in fear. I could barely make out the silhouette of more things coming in through the other back window, Cooper's window, and when I turned, Mia's as well. They just kept crawling in, wrapping themselves around us, shoving each other for better purchase and position, filling up the car with flesh that felt slimy and cold and rough. They smelled of old things, sour things, and they made grunting noises as they came, squeezing tighter and tighter as more made their way in from the outer dark. I was beyond most thought at this point, though I did have some dim idea that it would be a race between them crushing us to death or us suffocating. I was almost past the point of caring when I realized I could hear something new. It was hard to move at all now, but I managed to turn my head enough to peer through a gap into the front seat. It was Mia I had heard. She was gagging as one of those things started to crawl inside her mouth. I yanked my head back violently as I felt something at my own lips, grasping my jaw firmly and prying it apart with fingers that tasted of bitter earth. No, this couldn't happen. None of this was real, and it couldn't happen, and I heard Cooper choking and gagging too, as the first of them pushed past my mouth and went down my throat. There was no fighting now, no escaping. I just needed hope it would kill me soon. I just needed it to end. We all woke up at sunrise. The inside of the car was filthy. Not just dirt, but our own bodies voiding at some point of the nightmare of it all. We just held each other and wept for a few minutes, too broken to be ashamed. And then we slowly pulled ourselves together enough to clean off as best as we could, and then make our way back down the road. Mia had to drive us this time. Cooper's hands were trembling too badly, and it took all the concentration I had to not just start screaming and bawling every couple of minutes. She was shaken too, but she still managed to get us to a gas station where we could clean the car and ourselves enough to avoid too many questions other than why we were out all night. As it turned out, we didn't even get in much trouble. Our parents knew we were with each other, and that meant, even if we broke curfew, we should be safe enough. It wasn't until next week that we all started aging way too fast. They call it Werner syndrome, or adult progeria, and it makes you appear to age very fast. It's extremely rare, and having 3 cases that are progressing so rapidly, and they all know each other. We've already had 2 medical journal articles written about us, and our families keep talking about some kind of lawsuit, though no one can nail down who to sue or why. All that they do know is that something like that couldn't be a coincidence, or just congenital. It had to have, as one doctor told us, been influenced by something outside. I'm 19 now, but I look like I'm in my early 70s in most ways, except my feet. It's funny, but I guess without a lifetime of walking, my feet are somehow holding up better than the rest of me. Maybe I should be a foot model, since school's not really an option. My parents don't agree, of course. They want to help, but they also want to deny this is a death sentence. They want to pretend there's no reason we can't live for another 20 or 30 years, and with medical advancements even more. They don't want to hear what the doctors are already hinting at. Mia's kidneys are only functioning at about a quarter of what they should be. Cooper is going to need stents put in within the next month or 2, and that's assuming a heart attack doesn't kill him first. And that nest of tumours at the base of my spine are only going to grow from here. We get all the problems of old age without all the pesky living that comes with it. Of course, it's none of their fault. Our parents love us and want us to live, and the doctors, they don't know what to call it, other than something like Werner's, even if they know it doesn't quite fit. Even if we could tell them more, it wouldn't make a difference, because it's not something they can understand. They still labour under the assumption I used to make, that the world was sane and could be understood, that there was no magic or evil except in the minds of people, that there's nothing outside looking to get in. Mia thinks it's a thin spot. She says that places with violence and pain and fear, maybe they get eaten by the acid of it all. Maybe it gets easier to see things there, even if it's not really ghosts. Makes it easier for things to see you too. Early on, we did try to explain it to them. Once we saw we were getting worse, we panicked, and we were going to tell everything that happened that night, whether they thought we were crazy or not. We would tell them about how we still feel wrong all the time, still hear voices, and have odd thoughts almost every day. Something, anything that could help them fix us. But then we realised we couldn't. Literally, the words wouldn't come out when we tried to say them or write them. We could talk about it to each other, but to no one else. Even when they started crawling out of us again, it was our secret to keep. Because 6 months ago, I woke up to an arm pushing out of my mouth. It was impossible. All of it was impossible. But as I gagged and choked and cried, something pulled itself out of my body. When it was done, it stood in the moonlight and stared at me with a blank expression, no longer looking like something made out of dirt and clay, but now looking like a naked young man in his 20s. He studied me a moment longer and then went over to the window, sliding it open before crawling out silently into the night. A few minutes later, I got a call from Cooper, and then we called Mia. It happened to them too. It happens now like clockwork on every new moon. And the next morning, we always look and feel about 10 or 15 years older. They're eating us, bit by bit, from the inside, and there's nothing we can do about it. Something stops us from fighting it or telling about it, except to each other. I wanted to write this as a warning, but the only way I could write it at all was as a letter to Mia. It's funny, at first I couldn't write at all, but once I resolved to hide it away and not give it to anyone else, the words came again, and no one will ever find it. And if they do, I guess that means that we're already gone. If you do find it, please spread it to others if it will let you. Make them understand that this isn't just a story, but something that really happened to us. We didn't understand what we were doing. We didn't know when we made the invitation there was something out there waiting to answer. I tried talking to one of them once. I'd left the light on because I figured it would happen that night, and I wanted a better look at what crawled out of me. It looked like a woman in her 40s, birthmark on her back, freckles on her legs. Her hair even looked like she'd had it cut recently. Just like the rest, she just slid off of me and onto the floor before rising to stare at me for a moment, before leaving for good. This time, however, I spoke to her as she turned toward the window, and for a wonder, she turned back. How are you doing this? Why? How many of you are there? How many of you are there in me? For a moment, she just stared at me again, but then a terrible smile spread across her lips as she leaned over me. I thought I'd grown numb to all the horror, but my heart still felt close to bursting as she drew close to the side of my head and whispered in my ear. When she was done, she stood up again, the smile still frozen on her lips below a pair of green, dead eyes. Lifting a finger to her lips, she winked at me before turning away and going through the window. As she climbed out of view, I repeated the words she'd spoken, my voice dry and cracked and alien sounding in my own ears. There is only one of us. You don't find these places often, Roy said. Probably only a handful of times in a person's life, at least that they notice. When I asked him what he was talking about, I was already dreading the answer. We'd been roommates for 5 years, and for the most part, we got along and were good friends. But his interests were weird and varied, and when he got on a roll, he could talk your ear off about some obscure topic that was only interesting for a minute or two. And it wasn't like Roy was afraid of shutting me up if he wasn't in the mood to talk. He called it turning off his ears, and he meant it. He'd had cochlear implants since he was a kid, and he didn't mind unplugging if he didn't want to listen. I'd gotten to where I tried to steer around getting into long conversations when we ate together. But this time, it felt different. He was jittery acting, almost like he was scared of something, or had gotten some bad news. We were just sitting in our living room, eating leftover pasta. But Roy kept looking out the window, like he was expecting someone to break in on us. It was weird, you know. Something was wrong. So I asked him what was going on, and he started to say nothing. But then he seemed to change his mind. Told me that you don't find these spots often, but it does happen, if only a handful of times in a person's life. I asked him what he meant, and when he kept talking, this time, I listened. It's that feeling you get. Look, have you ever been somewhere and it felt different than it should? Like more empty, or more creepy, or just like you're unsettled but you don't know why? That's what it feels like. I'm not talking about places that are obviously creepy or dangerous or whatever. I'm talking about normal places, maybe even places you go every day, that don't feel normal this time. That's when it happens. Sandra's that girl I was telling you about. Sandra told me about this game she played when she was a kid. She was an army brat, and she picked it up when she was overseas.
Very bad.
Back then, she used to play it with a group of kids that told her about the game, which they'd apparently learned from another base kid that had come through years before. But they wouldn't actually play it. They acted like they had, but she thought they were lying. They all looked kind of excited and spooked when they brought it up to her, not as an invitation for them to all play, but as a dare to the new girl, or maybe just to impress her. They called it the Mumbling Game. The name didn't make any sense to her at the time. The game wasn't about mumbling, if you could even call it a game at all. You couldn't play it all the time, or at a place of your choosing. There was no score, no way to compete with others. It was just... well, it's easier if I just tell you what it is instead of what it isn't. The idea was that there are certain places that, on rare occasions, will feel off. Like I said, lonely or creepy or dangerous in a way that doesn't really make sense. Sandra told me that most people just ignore the feeling or try to leave as quick as they can. But if they stayed, some of those would find a way to play the game. So, you enter a room or a hallway, a parking lot or a building. The places can vary a lot. The only real constants are that feeling that something is wrong, and that you're always alone when you find one of, well, Sandra called them unsettled spots. If you notice yourself alone in an unsettled spot and you decide to stay, what comes next is simple. You find an area in the center of the space and you sit down. She said you should sit with your legs straight out and your hands palm down on the ground under your butt, so like sitting on the backs of your hands. But she didn't know if that was really needed or just some detail the kids had added. Either way, you sit there and you close your eyes, and if you really are in one of those spots, after a few minutes you'll hear a loud cracking noise followed by the sound of a bell. You can open your eyes then, and you'll know right away if it worked. Because you won't be alone anymore. There will be a person, or something that looks like a person, sitting or standing nearby, watching you, and smiling. They won't talk to you, or respond if you talk to them, and they won't approach you at first. They just stare and smile. And sure, maybe by that point you're scared, or at least more than a little freaked out, but at least they aren't going to grab you or even come closer to you. And that's when you get up and try to leave. Very quickly, you become aware of a few different things. First, no matter how far you go, you won't see another person now, and that feeling of wrongness will stay with you. Second, when you move, this smiling stranger moves with you, step for step. You go 20 steps back, they follow 20 steps. But if you go towards them, they don't retreat. They just keep smiling at you, as though sharing the joke or the secret of this strange dance you're doing now. Back and forth, left and right. You can't shake them. And depending on their gait compared to yours, and the directions you take, the gap between you is closing all the time. I laughed and asked Sandra what was supposed to happen if they caught you. Her face was serious when she answered me, so the kids didn't like talking about that. Not directly, but the couple of times they had, they'd used the Tagalog word, sampa. She said it meant something like to climb or to ride. I then asked her the obvious questions. If playing this game got you stuck in some bad version of the world, why would anyone play? And how would anyone know about it if you can't get out to tell them? You can get out, she said, but only by going back the way you got in. If you panic and just run off, or if you get to a place that your new companion has blocked you from getting back, sure, you could be screwed. But so long as you remember and keep your head, you can usually just go back out the way you came. You'll walk until the bad feeling goes away, and when you turn around, the thing following you will be gone. Sandra said that for days after telling her about the game, the other kids would tease her about it, but it was easy to make excuses as to why she couldn't play, as it just wasn't a very common thing for her to be alone or run across some spot that felt weird. They eventually got bored talking about it and moved on to other things, and by the next year, she'd almost completely forgotten about the game. It wasn't until a last weekend before moving back to the States that she had a reminder. She cut through the small garden center at the on-base PX. It was like a store for military families on the base, so the store wasn't closed or anything, and it was the middle of the afternoon. But there was no one else around. That wasn't that strange, but something still caused her to stop. She said the light looked weird, and even though she'd been there with her mom a dozen times, she had a scary feeling in her chest that she'd never felt before. It reminded her of the mumbling game, and once the thought came, it had her. Before she knew it, she was sitting down on the dirty concrete in the middle of the garden center and closing her eyes. After a couple of minutes, she heard a sharp crack. Then a bell rang nearby. She was scared by then, but she had to open her eyes and check right. There was a man standing on the far side of the garden center now, just standing there and staring at her. He wasn't dressed in fatigues or a uniform, or one of the outfits the people in the store usually wore. Everything he wore was grey. Grey pants and shirt, even a grey fringe of hair around a pale scalp. Maybe it was her imagination, but the teeth he showed as he smiled at her even looked grey in the light. Her reaction was immediate. She jumped to her feet and started to run out of the garden center, casting a glance back to see if he was following. He was. His strides long enough he could keep pace without fully having to run yet. And that's when she remembered the rest. Hard as it was, she made herself stop. And as soon as she stopped, the smiling man following her stopped too. Shaking, she made herself think of how she'd come into the garden center, and when she'd first started feeling the strangeness that had stopped her in the first place. It had been just a few feet before she entered the chain link area where they kept the mulch and fertilizer, and to get back there, she was going to have to go closer to the man. Much closer. She was just 11, but I think she was a smart and brave kid. Told me she walked slowly, every step tense, as she watched for some sign of him moving towards her. He didn't move a muscle at first, just stared and smiled, his eyes following her as she crept nearer. It was when she was just a few feet from being past him that the smile fell away and his lips began to move. She could hear him speaking, but the words were too low and deep for her to make out anything. Walking faster, she passed within 10 feet of him, but he just watched and mumbled as she went past, until she reached the point of moving away instead of moving closer, of course. Then, he began to turn. She bolted, running back the way she had first come, knowing that at any second, a cold, grey hand would close on her shoulder or neck. The feeling of wrongness had been gone for a few seconds, and she could see people moving around the parking lot now. And when she finally slowed down and looked back, The man
Forgot about that
was
one.
gone. Sandra said she never forgot about that afternoon, but she'd never seen that man again either. Said she figured she'd gotten away in time and that she'd left the game behind when she escaped. That was 15 years ago, man. Then, last week, she was working late. Her office was empty, but it didn't normally creep her out or anything. This time, it was different. One minute, everything seemed normal. The next, she felt this. She said it was like a weight settling on her, or the air pressure changing way faster than it should. Even after all that time, she knew what it was right away. Her first thought was, it's okay, don't panic. I just need to not play again and leave. It'll be fine. It was then that she looked behind her and saw the man from the garden centre staring at her and smiling just 10 feet away. She ran, of course. Of course she ran. But like I said, she's smart. She made sure she left the same way she'd come into the office, and she was bigger than when she was a kid, with a much longer stride. She managed to stay away from him until she got out to a car, and by then, the feeling and the man were gone again.
Anything I can do about that fire?
She said, at the time, she was too freaked out to think straight or make sense of it. She hadn't played the game again, so why had the man come back? It wasn't until she calmed down and thought about it some more that she realized the truth. She had never stopped playing. Sandra said that she thought these weird places, these unsettled spots, were places beside or underneath our world. They looked similar, but they were wrong somehow, and the things that lived there were wrong too. She said that when she left the spot in the garden centre, that bad version of the world and the thing following her hadn't just ceased to exist. And maybe it hadn't stopped following her either. It had tracked her over the years, moving behind the world and getting closer when it could.
Maybe I can.
And once it was close enough, it just had to wait until she was in a spot that wasn't right, a place where she could see it again, and it would finally reach out to take her. I didn't believe any of this, of course. I thought she was pulling my leg at first, or that she was messed up on drugs or something, though I'd never known her to even drink much, let alone anything that would make her delusional. But the more she talked, the more upset she became, and the more determined I became to try and help her. When just trying to convince her that it had just been a false memory or a bad dream didn't work, I suggested that maybe it was a real guy who had just been stalking her since she was a kid, had finally tracked her down again and snuck into a building maybe. She started crying then, said she'd already considered that, even had security pull the footage from the office that night. It showed her during the time she started to run away, but the camera couldn't see the man that followed. I wanted to say that was proof it was in her head, but I knew it would just make her angry and she'd pull away. Instead, I told her that I believed her, and I tried to help her figure out what we could do to fix it. What I didn't tell her was that I was going to try and play the game myself, so I could honestly tell her it was BS and maybe convince her to get whatever help she really needed. I wasn't sure if I'd get the chance, if I was going to do it honestly. Just like everybody, I've had times where a place felt weird or creepy, and I wasn't sure why. But not like often or anything. And if I didn't run across one of those spots, I either couldn't play the game at all, or I'd have to lie to her and act like I'd found an unsettled spot after all. But then nothing had happened. Funnily enough, I walked into one on Saturday. I was down in the archives at the library, pulling stuff for that paper I'm working on. It's always super quiet down there, and maybe some people think it's creepy, but I've always liked it. Felt very at home, you know. But as I walked back to the shelves, that changed. It was like I'd walked into a different climate or something. I was confused at first, and even when I thought of the game, I didn't really think I'd found an unsettled spot. but I did think it was close enough that I could tell myself I wasn't lying when I told Sandra I tried the game in the right kind of place and nothing happened. Roy fell silent, staring at nothing for a minute as I waited for him to go on. When he hadn't, I threw a napkin at him. Well, did you do it? Did anything happen? His face was pale when he turned to look at me. Yeah, it worked. It was just like she said. There was this girl standing there when I opened my eyes, a bit younger than us. I thought she was just a student at first, and she was actually kind of cute, smiling at me the way she was. And I was sitting in the middle of the floor like a goober after all. Licking his lips, he went on. But she didn't say anything or move, didn't respond when I said hey to her, just stared and smiled. I started to get scared. I took a couple of steps back and she took 2 steps towards me. I wanted to just run, but I remembered what Sandra had said. So instead, I cut over 1 row and then went forward. She'd gotten closer, of course, and when I tried to cut back over to the aisle, I needed to go out of the way I'd gone in. She was only a few feet away, not smiling anymore, mumbling. I frowned at him. Could you hear what she was saying? He shook his head. Hear? Not really, but... He sighed, pointing at his ear. Look, I got these implants when I was 12, but my hearing had started going when I was like 5 or 6. I learned to get by through paying close attention to what I could hear and by reading lips. Even now, I still look at people's lips a lot when they talk. I was scared witless and in a hurry, but it didn't stop me from seeing some of what she was saying. What was it? Trembling, he looked up at me. It said it would always find me, and that it was okay, that I couldn't get away because I was already there, that I'd always been there. Sitting back, I puffed out a breath. Get lost, dude. That's a creepy story. You should write that down. He stared at me for a moment in disbelief. It's not a story, you asshole. It really happened. I got away from her, at least for now, but... Damn, man. Sandra's gone. Gone?
Damn it.
What do you mean gone? Like she's moved or something? Standing up, he started pacing the living room, hands clenching and unclenching into fists. No, like she's disappeared. When I left the library to find her, to tell her I believed her, she wasn't at home, doesn't answer her phone. That was 4 days ago, and she hasn't been to work or anywhere else. No one knows where she is. Damn, man. I'm sorry. I didn't know. Did you call the cops? He nodded. I talked to him. So did her parents in Iowa, who also haven't heard from her. They're actually heading out here tomorrow, or Thursday, I think. Okay, well, yeah, I mean, maybe they can help you find her. And I'm glad to help too. Roy was already shaking his head. You don't get it, man. They're not going to find her. It's not like the cops found some sign of someone snatching her or something. She just disappeared, because something is different now. I raised an eyebrow at him. What do you mean? He kept pacing, his eyes flicking to the windows again, and then to the far corners of the room.
That sucked.
What are the odds of me finding a weird spot so soon after her telling me about them? It's like her telling me about it infected me or something, or the guy after her told one of his buddies to start trying to get to me. Give me a door and see if I'm dumb enough to step through. Roy let out a bitter laugh, which I was, and now this woman is after me, probably looking at me right now, waiting for a chance to push me back into that other version of things and run me down. He glanced at me, his face haunted. That's what struck me last night. Sandra's gone, and they're after me. So, I have to stay vigilant, stay in crowds, avoid spots that are strange, and I need to put distance between me and that girl. Roy gave me a humorous smile. Maybe that's why it took the guy so long to find Sandra again. Maybe it has to be walking or running. You know, steps. If you ride or fly, maybe they have to just stop wherever they are. It's only when you walk away from them that they can try to catch up to you. He shrugged. Damn, I don't know. I know that I plan to be gone before her parents get here. They're probably going to think I did something to her if I disappear, but I have bigger problems than that right now. He let out a sigh. You're my friend, and I didn't want you thinking I did something to hurt someone when I'm gone. And... His eyes widened. Damn, now that I think about it, maybe I've put you in danger just telling you about it. I mean it as an explanation, a warning even. But maybe I'm just making it worse. I need to go. I tried to stop him, but he wouldn't listen. I hadn't realized it, but he'd already packed some bags before we sat down to eat. And within a couple of minutes, he'd grabbed them and left. That was 3 weeks ago, and I haven't heard from him since. Sandra's parents did come by a few days after my last talk with Roy, and the police have talked to me since then too. Like he predicted, they are suspicious that he suddenly disappeared, but they don't have any evidence he did anything. Like the rest of us, they're just scared. I haven't slept much since all that. I find myself dozing off at work or taking odd naps when I'm at home without meaning to. It was yesterday when I woke up on the sofa in the middle of the night. I'd heard something, hadn't I? I was disoriented at first, and when I looked around, I saw someone standing near the kitchen. My first thought was a happy one. Roy, is that you, man? The figure didn't say anything, didn't move, and walked up a bit more. I realized the silhouette looked shorter than Roy's would have been. Heart pounding, I reached over and turned on a lamp. It was a teenage boy I'd never seen before, just standing there, staring and smiling. I thought of Roy's story immediately, but I didn't understand. The room felt weird. The air felt thick and electric, and even though I'd lived there for 5 years, everything seemed slightly off, slightly alien. No, I hadn't played the game. I was just sitting alone with my eyes closed, asleep, and what had woken me up? It might have been a bell. I stood up shakily. Hello? I tried to make my voice stern. I was the adult after all. What are you doing here? No response. Just staring and smiling. I wanted to yell at him or run out through the sliding glass door, but I forced myself to stop and think. How had I come into the room before I fell asleep? Had the room been weird then and I didn't notice? Or had it changed while I was asleep? I didn't know if it mattered, but I knew I'd come into the front door and sat down on the couch to watch TV for a few minutes. And I hadn't gone back up since falling asleep. That meant I needed to go past the kitchen to get to the front door and get out the way I'd gone in. That meant I'd have to walk within a foot of the thing that was watching me. It was hard to even take a step forward. I didn't know what would happen if it touched me, and I didn't know if it could grab me while I was moving toward it, so long as it didn't take a step. Assuming all these rules were actually rules at all. But I had to try something, and I couldn't stay in there with that thing. So I forced myself to take a step, and then another and another, angling myself toward the wall farthest from him, while making sure I traveled toward him more than I went to the side. The boy seemed to tense once or twice, as though anticipating being able to step forward. But every time I'd correct enough, that he had to stay still, his smile seeming to widen a bit as I drew nearer. I was 10 feet away when he began to mutter and mumble under his breath, his lips moving slow at first, and then more quickly as I got closer. I was pressed against the wall now, sliding along it, knocking off a picture and raking my back against the light switch in my effort to stay as far away from him as possible. It was working so far, but my fear was that as soon as I was past him, he'd just turn and grab me before I could get the door open and get away. Drawing even with him, I stopped. He had to turn to face me, less than 2 feet between us, but he hadn't reached out a hand yet. My next step. He'd be on me if he could reach me in time. It was hard to think. I was so scared. He looked like a normal boy, but he still seemed wrong. Much like the room looked normal, but didn't feel that way. I could hear his voice, and I thought I could make out a few words here and there. Him saying I should just go with him, that it didn't matter because I was already there. God damn it, no. I couldn't listen to that. I had to get away, but the second No. I was looking at it wrong. The time didn't matter. The space did. If what Roy had said was right, I just had to take a big enough jump that he couldn't reach me in one step. A big enough step to get to the door, open it, and get out with my next one. I looked to the front door and then back at him. I could see him tensing, getting ready to pounce. His legs were a lot shorter than mine, but his arms were long, and I had to stop overthinking it and just go. So I did, shifting my weight to my right foot. I did a side jump as far and as fast as I could. When I landed, I would have fallen before my shoulder slamming into the front door, the knob digging into my hip painfully as I slid aside and started to turn it. Opening the door, I looked around. The boy's fingers were inches from my back. I could try to close the door behind me, but I had no way of knowing if it would stop him or even slow him down. Better, I just get into the hall and run back the way I'd come. Leaping forward, I could hear him behind me, mumbling faster. One step, and he seemed to grow louder. 2, and he was more distant. There was silence by the 4th, but I kept running. Only when I reached the end of the hallway did I realize the oppressive feeling was gone. Opening the door to the stairwell, I finally looked back for my pursuer. As far as I could tell, he was gone.
Oh. It's just an advertisement for other ROM hacks? Maybe?
Right, I said, raising my voice on deck to make sure I could be heard. There are 4 of us, me up front and 3 others lounging around on deck chairs. What have we got so far? The anchor's bad, Cole answered, sitting upright to rub a hand.
Don't want to leave. I'm done. By night, I mean now it's 7 in the morning. Alright. Well, I'll see you.